You grew up believing the sky was honest, that the heavens moved like gears in a silent clock. Each planet a polished tooth, each orbit a promise kept. Time passed. Empires fell. And above it all, the machine never lied. Until it did. You imagine the solar system the way humanity always has. A grand, luminous mechanism turning in the dark. A cosmic watch laid open on velvet space. The sun at the center, burning steadily, patient and indifferent. Around it, the planets glide along invisible rails, curves so precise they feel ordained. No hesitation. No rebellion. Every orbit repeating like a ritual older than memory. This was the first great comfort science ever gave you. That the universe, at least here at home, followed rules. You trusted those rules the way sailors once trusted stars. The way monks trusted prayer. The way clocks trust time. Even chaos had boundaries. Even gravity had manners. You could point to a planet and say where it would be tomorrow. Next year. 10,000 years from now. The solar system was not a mystery. It was a solved equation, a completed symphony. A finished story. And then, far from the warmth of the sun, beyond the bright confidence of familiar planets, something began to drift wrong. So far out that sunlight arrives tired. So distant that space itself feels unfinished. Out past Neptune, where the solar system thins into a whisper, where gravity loosens its grip and darkness starts to win, you notice it. At first, it doesn't look like rebellion. It looks like noise. A rounding error. A smudge at the edge of certainty. Small, frozen worlds. Ancient debris. Icy bodies tumbling through the outskirts of the sun's dominion. Nothing important. Nothing that should matter. And yet, they move as if they are listening to something you cannot hear. You lean closer. These distant objects should be chaotic. Their paths should overlap, scatter, collide, forget. They are relics of violence, leftovers from the solar system's brutal youth, when planets smashed, migrated, and stole from one another. Disorder should rule here, but it doesn't. Instead, you begin to see alignment. Their orbits are stretched in the same direction, tilted the same way, not randomly, but together, like iron filings around a magnet you cannot see. You trace their paths through the void and feel a quiet discomfort crawl up your spine. Because gravity, real gravity, does not do this politely. It announces itself. It bends light. It shapes planets. It leaves fingerprints everywhere. And yet here, in the cold margins of the solar system, something massive is shaping motion without ever stepping into the light. You realize what this means. Orbits are not opinions. They are confessions. Every curve, every tilt, every stretch is a world admitting the presence of something else. Something heavier. Something dominant. Something close enough to command, but far enough to remain hidden. The solar system was supposed to be transparent. But measured. No. This region, known to you as the Kuiper Belt, was expected to be messy but honest. A graveyard of debris, not a choreographed dance. And yet the data refuses to behave. You try to explain it away. Of course you do. Humanity always does. You blame chance, bias, small number statistics. You tell yourself the universe is large and coincidences are inevitable. But the patterns persist. They grow sharper with every observation. Clear, louder. This is no accident. This is not randomness. This is influence. And suddenly, the question you were never supposed to ask rises to the surface of your mind, uninvited and unwelcome. What is moving them? Because whatever it is, it does not belong in the solar system you were taught to believe in. You feel it now, the unease beneath the numbers. If something massive enough to shepherd entire populations of distant worlds exists out there, then the solar system is not finished. It is not settled. It is not stable. It is still being shaped. The comforting image of a completed cosmic machine begins to crack. Gears slip. Teeth grind. The clock no longer ticks, it hesitates. You imagine gravity like a fabric stretched across space, smooth and taut. Every planet presses into it, creating gentle dimples. Predictable. Elegant. But now, Somewhere in the dark, something unseen is pressing down hard enough to warp the entire sheet. And you cannot see it. This is where the fear deepens, not the loud, cinematic fear of explosions or collisions, but the slow existential kind. The kind that arrives quietly and refuses to leave. Because if the solar system contains something large, ancient, and hidden, then your maps are wrong. And if your maps are wrong here, in the one place you believed was fully understood, what does that say about everything else? You begin to sense the scale of the betrayal. This isn't a distant galaxy behaving strangely. This isn't exotic physics at the edge of the observable universe. This is your neighborhood. Your cosmic backyard. The place you thought was safe from surprise. And the implications ripple outward like a tremor through glass. If something massive can remain unseen for centuries, then visibility is not truth. If gravity can whisper instead of shout, then absence is not reassurance. If the solar system can still hide secrets, then certainty itself is fragile. You feel smaller now. Not because the universe is large, you always knew that, but because it is incomplete. Still writing itself. Still correcting errors. Still capable of surprise. And then comes the most unsettling realization of all. This discovery did not come from looking for monsters. It came from noticing a mistake. A slight misalignment. A subtle drift. A footstep where no foot should be. The universe did not announce its secret. It slipped. You pull back, staring once more at the imagined clockwork of the solar system. The sun still burns. The planets still glide. The sky still looks calm. But you can no longer trust the silence. Somewhere beyond the reach of easy light, something is pulling, shaping, correcting. A hidden hand on the gears of your cosmic home. Whether it is a planet, a shadow of something stranger, or a flaw in the rules themselves does not matter. Yet, what matters is this. The solar system you believed in never existed. It was a draft. A first approximation. A story told before the ending was known. And now, as you stand at the edge of certainty, listening to the quiet grind of broken clockwork, you feel the next question forming. Slow, inevitable, impossible to ignore. If something is hiding out there, why hasn't it shown itself? The darkness does not answer. It only waits. You stare into the cold edge of the sun's reach, where light arrives thin and tired, where the solar system forgets its own name. This is where nothing important was supposed to happen. This is where the universe blinked. You travel outward, not in distance but in feeling, away from warmth, away from familiarity, away from the comforting illusion that everything close to home has already been understood. The sun shrinks behind you, no longer a roaring god but a distant ember. The planets fall away one by one, their orbits clean and confident, their paths worn smooth by billions of years of repetition. Past Neptune, the light changes. It doesn't vanish. It thins. It stretches. It hesitates. Out here, the solar system loses its sharp edges. Gravity loosens its grip. Space feels unfinished, like a sentence left trailing off into silence. This region was never meant to be elegant. It is a junk drawer at the edge of creation, a place where the debris of planetary birth was thrown and forgotten. Ice and rock, frozen remnants from a violent past, drifting without purpose. Astronomers expected chaos here. They expected randomness. They expected noise. And so, for decades, they looked without fear. Without suspicion. They catalogued distant points of light, faint and slow, barely moving against the deeper stillness of the stars. Cold worlds, ancient and inert. Nothing more than footnotes in the grand story of the solar system. You imagine the screens glowing softly in dark observatories. The quiet hum of computers. The slow patience of people who believe they are filling in the last blank spaces of a completed map. No one was hunting a mystery. They were counting leftovers. The first clue does not arrive like a revelation. It arrives like a discomfort, a subtle unease that something, somewhere, does not sit right. You notice it in the data first, not as a shock, but as a repetition. A distant object with an orbit that feels familiar. Another one months later, tracing a strangely similar path. Another after that. At first, you shrug it off. Out here, coincidences are cheap. The numbers are small. The margins are wide. The universe is vast enough to forgive a few odd alignments. But the alignments don't stop. You plot the orbits of these distant icy bodies, members of what you call the Kuiper Belt, and something unsettling begins to emerge. Their paths are not scattered like shrapnel from an explosion. They are grouped, pointing, aligned. It's as if a silent wind is pushing them all the same way. You lean closer, tracing their elongated loops through the dark. These orbits should be messy, tilted at random angles, crossing and diverging without pattern. That's what violent birth creates. That's what entropy demands. But what you see instead feels deliberate, like soldiers marching in formation across a frozen battlefield. The moment of realization doesn't come with fireworks. It arrives quietly, like the sudden awareness that a room has gone silent. Randomness is gone. Pattern has replaced it. And patterns are dangerous. Because patterns mean influence. You know this instinctively, deep in the part of your mind that understands gravity not as equations, but as consequence. Things move the way they do because something else tells them to. Every orbit is a negotiation. Every curve is a compromise between speed and pull. These distant worlds are confessing something. They are leaning. They are pointing. They are obeying. You feel the first true chill then, not from the cold of space, but from the implications sliding into place. Influence means mass. And mass means presence. Something is there. The fear does not explode. It accumulates. You double-check the data. Then you triple-check it. You account for biases, selection effects, observational limits. You rotate the coordinate systems. You scramble the numbers, hoping the pattern will dissolve under scrutiny. It doesn't. Instead, it sharpens. The orbits whisper the same story from different angles, different distances, different times. Independent witnesses telling the same tale. Worlds that have never touched, never collided, never spoken, yet somehow agree. You feel the ground shift beneath an assumption you didn't even know you were standing on. Because if something massive enough to shape these orbits exists, it should not be hiding. Gravity is not subtle. It is honest. It announces itself through motion, through distortion, through light bent and time delayed. And yet whatever is doing this remains unseen. No glare. No reflection. No obvious signature. Just consequence. The solar system, once imagined as a transparent machine, now feels layered. Deeper. Thicker. As if something has been buried inside it, wrapped in darkness, exerting control without ever revealing its face. You imagine gravity here not as a smooth field, but as an unseen hand pressing into space from the outside, deforming paths like fingers dragging through dust. The thought tightens in your chest. Because if something can remain hidden out here, beyond Neptune, beyond easy light, then invisibility is not absence. It is strategy. Or worse, inevitability. You begin to understand why this discovery feels different from others. This is not about finding something new. It is about realizing something has been missing all along. The solar system did not suddenly change. Your understanding did. And that is far more unsettling. Because understanding is supposed to grow outward, toward distant galaxies, ancient light, the edge of time itself. Not inward. Not backward. Not into the familiar. You were taught that the solar system was the control group of the universe. The place where the rules were tested, confirmed, trusted. Now the control is compromised. The machine you believed was finished is still adjusting itself. Still correcting. Still hiding weight in the dark. You feel the existential vertigo set in. If something massive can influence worlds without being seen, what else have you mistaken for randomness? What other patterns have you dismissed as coincidence because they were inconvenient? The universe suddenly feels less like a map and more like a crime scene. And you are standing in the middle of it, surrounded by clues that refuse to speak plainly. You pull back from the data, but it follows you. The aligned orbits linger in your mind like afterimages burned into the retina. You cannot unsee them. You cannot unknow what they imply. Somewhere beyond the last bright planet, something is shaping motion. Quietly. patiently, without permission. You do not know what it is yet. A planet, a relic, a stranger captured from another star, a flaw in the rules themselves. But you know this. The anomaly was never meant to be found. It revealed itself only because the universe slipped, just slightly, out of character. And now that you have noticed the crack in the sky, the question tightens, inevitable and relentless. Something is out there. How long has it been watching from the dark? The cold edge of the solar system offers no answer. Only alignment. You want the universe to be reasonable, to obey the rules it taught you to trust. But when gravity whispers instead of shouts, you learn how quickly certainty turns defensive, and how hard it is to unsee a shadow once it moves. You feel the resistance before you hear it. It arrives quietly, wrapped in professionalism, cloaked in calm skepticism. A tightening of language, a careful clearing of the throat, the soft suggestion that perhaps, just perhaps, you are seeing what you want to see. Because this is how science protects itself. Astronomy, especially, has learned to be suspicious of beauty. Patterns seduce. Alignments lie. The universe is vast enough to fake intention, and the human mind is desperate enough to believe it. You were trained for this moment. To distrust symmetry. To question coincidence. To assume error before anomaly. So when the distant icy bodies beyond Neptune refuse to scatter like debris and instead move with eerie agreement, your first instinct is not wonder. It is denial. You tell yourself the data is incomplete. That telescopes favor certain regions of the sky. That faint objects are easier to spot when they cluster in familiar places. That selection effects, those quiet assassins of truth, are playing tricks again. You imagine the solar system as it has always been taught to you. A finished inventory. 8 planets. Known dwarf worlds. Catalog debris. A ledger balanced and closed. There is comfort in closure. And so you lean into it. You rerun simulations. You scramble the data. You add noise. You remove objects one by one, hoping the pattern will dissolve into statistical fog. It doesn't. The alignment survives every attempt to kill it. And now the silence in the room grows heavier. This is the moment science rarely dramatizes. The moment between discovery and acceptance. The moment where truth stands accused. You begin to hear the familiar arguments echo through conference rooms and journal reviews. Coincidence. Small number statistics. Observational bias. They are not wrong to be cautious. History is littered with cosmic ghosts, phantom planets, imagined forces, elegant mistakes that vanished under better data. You remember those lessons well. The sky has lied before. But this feels different. Because the patterns are not fragile. They are stubborn. Like fingerprints pressed too deeply into glass. The more you wipe, the clearer they become. And now the question you've been avoiding steps fully into the light, heavy and unwelcome. What kind of object could shape orbits without ever being seen? It is not a rhetorical question. It is a threat. Gravity is supposed to be honest. Mass reveals itself through motion, through light bent into arcs, through clocks ticking slower near its grip. Large things announce themselves. They leave scars. And yet here you are, staring at consequences without a cause. You imagine the solar system as a stage play you've watched 1,000 times. The actors hit their marks. The lights come up on cue. Nothing improvises. Now imagine a hand backstage, moving props without stepping into the spotlight. That is what this feels like. An unseen presence altering choreography. And the deeper you go, the worse it becomes. Because if something massive enough to herd distant worlds exists out there, it should not be hiding. The solar system has been surveyed, mapped, scanned across wavelengths your ancestors could never dream of. Infrared, optical, radio. Nothing this large should have slipped through unnoticed. Unless the map is wrong. Unless your inventory is incomplete. Unless the solar system is not the tidy museum exhibit you believed it to be, but a living system with dark corners still untouched by light. The thought settles in your chest, heavy and cold. Accepting this means admitting a failure, not of technology, but of assumption. It means admitting that even here, at home, you do not fully understand what is moving what. the tension sharpens. You can feel it now, not as fear, but as fracture. Two truths pull against each other like opposing tides. On one side, decades of confidence. A solar system believed to be complete, predictable, solved. On the other, data that refuses to bow. You watch as resistance hardens. Papers grow cautious. Language becomes surgical. Claims are softened, hedged, wrapped in disclaimers thick enough to survive peer review. No one wants to be the one who cries monster in the dark, because history is unforgiving to those who see too much too soon. And yet the universe keeps pushing back. Each new object discovered beyond the known planets does not scatter the pattern. It reinforces it. Each new orbit traced adds another quiet vote to the same unsettling conclusion. The influence is real. Something is shaping these paths. And the more you try to explain it away, the worse the data becomes. This is where denial turns exhausting. You feel it in the late nights, the rechecked calculations, the uneasy sense that the universe is not conspiring against you. It is simply indifferent to your comfort. You imagine gravity here as a slow, invisible tide, pulling from somewhere beyond the horizon. Not violent, not dramatic, just persistent, relentless. And now the implications begin to metastasize. If the solar system can hide something massive, what else might be missing from your models? What other assumptions rest on incomplete inventories, on maps drawn with confidence instead of humility? You feel the existential weight press down. This is not about one unseen object. It is about the limits of knowing. Because science advances not only by discovery, but by surrender, by admitting that the universe does not owe you clarity. And still, the question refuses to loosen its grip. How can something shape the architecture of the solar system without ever revealing its face? The silence that follows is unbearable. Not because there is no answer, but because there might be too many. You step back from the resistance, from the debates and disclaimers, and look again at the larger picture. The solar system no longer feels like a diagram. It feels like a story with missing pages. The data has not accused anyone. It has not shouted. It has simply persisted. Quietly. Patiently. Like gravity itself. Whatever is out there does not need belief. It does not need acceptance. It exerts its influence regardless of what you are ready to admit. And as the cracks in certainty widen, a darker realization takes shape. If something has remained unseen for this long, it is not because it is weak. It is because it does not need to be seen. The universe has finished arguing. Now it waits. And somewhere beyond the last familiar orbit, the next clue is already moving, slowly, silently, pulling the story forward whether you are ready or not. You reach the edge of what you are allowed to believe. Beyond it, rules begin to soften. Certainty fractures into suggestion. And somewhere in the dark, a forbidden idea starts breathing. There is a moment in every great discovery when language fails. Not because the idea is complex, but because it is dangerous. You feel that moment now. The data has cornered you. Resistance has worn thin. Denial has exhausted its vocabulary. The patterns refuse to die, and silence no longer feels neutral. It feels complicit. So you allow yourself to think the thought. Just for a moment. What if there is something out there? Not debris. Not noise. Not a statistical ghost. But a world. You picture the solar system from afar, the sun a pale flame in an ocean of black, the planets circling like moths around a dying fire. Everything you know fits neatly inside the structure. Everything behaves. And then, far beyond Neptune, past the last planet you were taught to trust, you imagine weight. Real weight. Enough to bend space. Enough to command orbits. Enough to explain the impossible choreography you've been watching unfold in the dark. The idea feels wrong the instant it forms. Because planets are not supposed to hide. They are born loud, violent, glowing. They carve paths through dust and gas, announcing themselves with heat and light and gravitational scars. They leave debris fields, resonances, clearings. They leave fingerprints. And yet this one, if it exists, has left only consequences. You think of an empty house at night. Every room silent. Every door locked. And then footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. You don't see anyone. But the floorboards know. This is where the rule snaps. Because gravity, of all forces, is supposed to be honest. It does not lie. It does not hide. It tells the truth through motion, through light bent into arcs, through clocks that slow and stretch near massive things. You don't need to see an object to know it exists. Gravity will introduce it for you. And gravity has been speaking. Quietly. Relentlessly. Those distant icy worlds, their aligned orbits, their stretched paths, are not asking for explanation anymore. They are demanding it. You begin to sketch the forbidden possibility in your mind. A planet. Not small. Not distant debris. Not a failed rock. But something several times the mass of Earth. A deep, heavy presence moving slowly through the cold outskirts of the sun's domain. Too far to shine. Too slow to reveal itself easily. Too patient to care whether you are ready to accept it. This breaks more than one rule. First, the census. You were taught that the solar system's inventory was complete. 8 planets. A handful of dwarfs. A scattering of leftovers. Balanced. Admitting another massive planet means admitting you missed something fundamental. Second, formation. Planets are supposed to form close to their star, where material is abundant and collisions are frequent. Out there, so far from the sun, there should not have been enough substance to build something this large. Unless it moved. Unless it was thrown outward by ancient violence. Unless it was stolen. The idea begins to feel less like astronomy and more like archaeology. A crime scene frozen in time, evidence scattered across billions of years. And then comes the name. It isn't shouted. It isn't declared. It is whispered in observatories, typed cautiously in papers, spoken with the kind of hesitation reserved for ideas that could change everything. Planet 9. A placeholder. A warning. A confession that you do not yet understand what you have found. You repeat it silently, testing its weight. Planet 9. Once named, the idea grows teeth. You imagine its scale, not as numbers, but as sensation. Several times the mass of Earth means gravity deep enough to hold moons, to sculpt space around it like clay. A world that could crush mountains beneath alien skies, if it has skies at all. It does not race around the sun like the inner planets. It drifts. Slowly. Patiently. Taking thousands of years to complete a single, elongated orbit. While civilizations rise and fall, it barely moves. While languages are born and forgotten, it advances a fraction of its path. It exists on a timescale that makes humanity feel like static. And it does all of this in darkness. No reflected sunlight bright enough to betray it easily. No convenient transits. No obvious glow. Just a cold, distant presence exerting authority without spectacle. You feel the implications stacking up like dominoes. If Planet 9 exists, the solar system is not what you thought it was. It is not a neat, isolated system that formed quietly and stayed put. It is a survivor of chaos, of migration, of theft and exile. This means planets can be ejected from their birthplaces and still remain bound. It means stars may trade worlds like stolen artifacts in crowded stellar nurseries. It means your solar system may carry scars from encounters long forgotten. Planet 9 becomes more than a hypothesis. It becomes a witness, a relic of a violent childhood you were never taught about. And suddenly the question shifts. It is no longer, is this real? It is, what else does this allow? Because if a planet can hide at the edge of the solar system, unseen for centuries, then invisibility is not rare. It is contextual. It depends on distance, on patience, on whether you are looking in the right way. You realize this discovery does not just add a planet. It rewrites the rules of planetary architecture. Solar systems everywhere become less predictable, less orderly, more dangerous, more alive. Your sense of cosmic comfort erodes. Because if your own system can surprise you like this, then every distant star you've catalogued, every exoplanetary system you've modeled, carries uncertainty you have not yet faced. The universe feels larger now, not in size, but in possibility. And possibility is terrifying. You stand at the edge of acceptance, staring into a darkness that now feels crowded instead of empty. Planet 9, if it exists, has not revealed itself yet. It has only allowed you to notice its influence, like a presence behind a curtain, shifting the air without stepping forward. The rule has snapped. Planets can hide. Gravity can whisper. The solar system can lie by omission. And as you let this forbidden possibility settle into your understanding, another question begins to form, slow and inevitable, like an eclipse creeping across the sun. If Planet 9 is real, where did it come from? The darkness beyond Neptune does not answer. It only waits for the next rule to break. You thought planets were born in light, forged close to fire, bound by gravity's first embrace. But now, in the farthest dark, something waits. A world that should not be here, asking how much of reality you truly understand. You drift backward in time, not gently, but violently. You return to the moment the sun was not yet a star, but a swelling knot of fire and dust collapsing under its own ambition. A newborn furnace igniting in the dark, pulling everything nearby toward it. This is how planets are supposed to be born. Like sparks around a fire. Close, bright, chaotic. You picture a glowing disk of gas and debris spinning faster and faster, collisions ringing out like thunder. Pebbles slam into boulders. Boulders fuse into worlds. Gravity is impatient here, hungry and loud. Nothing hides in this place. Everything announces itself in heat, in light, in motion. Planets emerge where material is thick and time is short. They grow fast or they don't grow at all. The farther you move from the fire, the thinner the disk becomes. Fewer collisions. Less substance. Less chance. This is the rule. And the rule worked. The inner solar system packed itself tight. Rocky worlds formed close to the sun, heavy with metal and scarred by impacts. Farther out, giants rose, bloated, gas-wrapped titans pulling hydrogen like breath into lungs. Beyond them, the light thinned. The debris froze. The leftovers scattered. Past Neptune, formation was supposed to fail. There should be no sparks there. Only ash. And yet, something is wrong with this picture. Because in that cold, light-starved darkness, gravity is still speaking. And what it is describing does not belong. You hold the idea of Planet 9 up against everything you know about how solar systems form. It does not fit. Not even close. Too far. At that distance, the sun is no longer a commanding presence. It is a memory. A dim star barely able to warm frozen surfaces. The protoplanetary disk out there would have been thin, fragile, almost empty. There should not have been enough material to build something massive. Yet the orbits say otherwise. Too massive. Several times the mass of Earth means gravity deep enough to dominate space around it. Enough to herd distant worlds. Enough to leave long-term scars in the architecture of the solar system. That kind of weight should have been obvious. Too alone. Planets rarely form in isolation. They grow in crowds, jostling, colliding, migrating together. A solitary giant wandering the dark edges feels unnatural. Like finding a cathedral in the middle of an uninhabited desert. The mismatch gnaws at you. Because physics is not sentimental. It does not make exceptions for mystery. If a planet exists where it should not, then something violent, or something external, must have happened. And now the possibilities turn dark. You imagine the early solar system not as a peaceful nursery, but as a war zone. Young giants spiraling inward and outward. Gravity slinging worlds like stones. Close encounters tearing orbits apart. In this chaos, Planet 9 could have formed closer to the sun, where the fire was strong, where material was abundant, and then been thrown outward. Exiled. Cast into the dark by a gravitational betrayal. You picture the moment. A near collision with a gas giant, gravity flaring like a sudden scream, trajectories snapping. One world flung outward, stretched into a vast, elongated orbit that would take thousands of years to complete. A survivor. A scar. But there is another possibility. One colder. One more unsettling. Capture. You widen your view. You stop thinking of the sun as isolated. Because stars are not born alone. They emerge in clusters, crowded stellar nurseries where newborn suns drift past each other like embers in a storm. Their gravitational fields overlap. Their disks brush. Their worlds are vulnerable. In such places, planets can be stolen. You imagine it happening slowly, silently. Another star passes close, too close. Its gravity reaches out, fingers brushing the outskirts of the sun's domain. A wandering planet, loosely bound, feels the pull shift. And then, ownership changes. No explosion. No warning. Just a quiet reassignment of allegiance. The planet leaves its birth star behind and begins orbiting a new sun, forever marked by an orbit that doesn't quite belong. If Planet 9 is captured, then your solar system is not just a survivor of chaos. It is a thief. A collector of relics from another stellar past. You feel the weight of that implication settle. Because capture means history you cannot see. It means Planet 9 carries memories of another sky, another star, another arrangement of worlds long gone. It means your solar system is stitched together from pieces that do not share the same origin story. And if that is true, if planets can be thrown away, stolen, repurposed, then stability is not a feature of the universe. It is a temporary illusion. You think of the solar system as a house you believed was built all at once, clean and intentional. Now it feels more like a structure renovated over billions of years, walls added, rooms repurposed, entire sections imported from somewhere else. The floor plan no longer makes sense. And suddenly the implications spill far beyond one hidden world. If Planet 9 exists the way the data suggests, then the neat diagrams of planetary formation crumble. Solar systems everywhere become suspect. Order gives way to history. Design gives way to accident. Exoplanet systems you thought you understood may be patched together from migrations and thefts you can't yet detect. The tidy categories, hot Jupiters, super-Earths, resonant chains, begin to feel like surface patterns over deeper chaos. The universe stops feeling engineered. It starts feeling survived. You realize this discovery doesn't just add complexity. It removes comfort. Because if planets can be displaced so easily, if entire worlds can be uprooted and reassigned, then nothing about cosmic architecture is guaranteed. Not permanence. Not belonging. Not safety. You feel small in a new way. Not because the universe is vast, but because it is unstable. You linger on the image of Planet 9 drifting through the cold, either an exile from your own system or a captured stranger from another sun. Both possibilities are unsettling. One implies violence at the heart of your solar system's past. The other implies encounters you were never taught to imagine. Either way, the idea of a clean, finished system dissolves. The sun no longer feels like a solitary king. It feels like a participant in a larger, Messier cosmic exchange. Worlds traded. Paths altered. Histories overwritten. And as you let that sink in, another thought begins to surface, quiet but persistent. If Planet 9 reshaped the solar system once, what is it still shaping now? The dark does not answer. It only deepens, pulling the story toward consequences you have not yet faced. You thought discovery would bring clarity. Instead, it brings fracture. Ideas sharpen into weapons. Certainty turns inward, and truth becomes the battlefield. You stand inside the argument now. Not as an observer, but as terrain. The calm consensus that once held the solar system together has dissolved into competing gravitational pulls. Ideas orbiting ideas, each trying to claim authority over the same unsettling data. This is what science looks like when it stops agreeing. On one side, there are those who accept the most direct conclusion. They follow gravity's trail where it leads, even if it disappears into darkness. They believe the solar system is harboring a secret, an unseen world, massive and distant, shaping orbits with silent authority. For them, Planet 9 is not a provocation. It is an inevitability. They imagine it moving slowly beyond the last known planets, dragging ancient debris into alignment the way a shepherd guides a scattered flock. To them, the data is not ambiguous, it is convergent. Multiple lines of evidence whispering the same forbidden name. But across the divide, skepticism hardens. Another camp folds its arms and narrows its eyes. They argue that the universe has fooled you before, that small datasets can hallucinate patterns, that bias, human, observational, technological, can sculpt meaning where none exists. They say the alignment is an illusion, a mirage born from incomplete sky surveys and the human hunger for narrative. They warn that declaring a hidden planet is the fastest way to repeat history's most embarrassing mistakes. To them, Planet 9 is a ghost story told by statistics under stress. And you feel the tension rise. Because both sides are armed with reason. Both are defending something precious. Then the argument turns darker, more fundamental. Because if neither coincidence nor hidden planets fully explains what you see, another possibility slithers into the room, quiet, dangerous, almost unspeakable. What if gravity itself is misbehaving? You feel the chill immediately. Gravity is the oldest promise physics ever made. The force you trust when everything else breaks down. The reason planets stay loyal, stars remain bound, and time itself bends without tearing. But what if that promise has limits? What if, at extreme distances, where space is thin and acceleration slows, gravity does not follow the rules you memorized? You picture the equations of motion not as laws etched into stone, but as approximations written in pencil. Accurate most of the time. Fragile at the edges. Some propose subtle deviations from Newtonian gravity, small corrections that only reveal themselves where the sun's grip weakens. Not enough to disrupt inner planets. Just enough to sculpt distant orbits into false patterns. This idea is intoxicating, because it removes the need for a hidden world. But it comes at a cost. It suggests that the force holding the universe together may be incomplete. That the math you use to describe motion has blind spots large enough to hide entire worlds. And then, inevitably, the most radical theory arrives. It does not knock. It intrudes. A primordial black hole. You imagine it not as a devourer of stars, but as a relic, compressed matter left over from the universe's first breath. A mass no larger than a mountain, yet heavier than planets. Silent. Invisible. It would not shine. It would not reflect. It would only pull. Such an object drifting through the outer solar system could shape orbits without ever revealing itself to telescopes. Gravity without light. Influence without presence. The idea feels like heresy. Not because it is impossible, but because it feels too elegant. Too cosmic. Too much like replacing one mystery with another that reaches all the way back to the beginning of time. And now the war is fully ignited. You feel the stakes rise beyond astronomy. This is no longer about what is out there. It is about what you are willing to sacrifice. If Planet 9 is real, then your solar system is incomplete. Your maps are wrong. Your sense of cosmic order has been curated by ignorance. There are worlds you did not account for, influences you never noticed. But the laws of physics remain intact. Gravity stays honest. The equations survive. If the data is illusion, then discovery itself becomes suspect. It means even careful observation can betray you. That patterns can emerge from noise so convincingly they rewrite entire narratives before collapsing. But at least reality remains simple. And if gravity itself must be rewritten, then nothing is safe. Not your predictions. Not your simulations. Not even the quiet assumption that tomorrow's sky will behave like yesterday's. You imagine physics as a cathedral, arches of equations supporting everything you know. Alter gravity, and cracks begin to spiderweb across the structure. Dark matter. Cosmic expansion. The fate of galaxies. All suddenly unstable. Each explanation solves one problem by creating another. Every answer costs you something you thought was true. This is why the debate feels so violent. Not because scientists are emotional, but because truth is expensive. Someone will lose. Either you accept a hidden world lurking beyond Neptune, reshaping your understanding of planetary systems, or you accept that your most trusted laws falter at the edges of the known universe. Or you accept that the universe has fooled you entirely. You sense the exhaustion beneath the argument. The quiet fear that comes from realizing there may be no clean resolution. No answer that preserves everything you love. The universe does not negotiate. It offers options. And each one hurts. You drift above the battlefield of ideas, watching theories collide like slow-moving continents. None emerge unscarred. None claim total victory. The data remains cold, indifferent, patient. It does not care which explanation comforts you. It does not care which equations survive. It simply exists, bending orbits, shaping motion, leaving fingerprints you cannot erase. Somewhere in the darkness, the truth is already decided. The only question left is what you are willing to give up to reach it. The planet? A law of physics? Or your faith in certainty itself? As the war of theories grinds on, one thing becomes clear. The universe has forced a choice. And whichever answer you choose, you will never see the solar system the same way again. You were told the danger lived far away, in distant galaxies, in ancient explosions. But the most unsettling threats do not roar. They lean, they whisper, and they wait. You drift back inward, away from the frozen frontier, away from the long, slow orbits traced in darkness, back toward the warmth you recognize, back toward the pale blue certainty you call home. You return to Earth. From a distance, it still looks serene, a marble wrapped in cloud, turning patiently beneath the sun-oceans breathing, continents drifting, seasons arriving on schedule like loyal messengers. You have always believed this place was insulated, protected by scale, shielded by distance. The outer solar system felt abstract, too far away to matter. But gravity does not respect comfort. It does not care about distance in the way you do. It does not arrive as catastrophe. It seeps. It accumulates. It nudges. And so the forbidden question finally turns its gaze inward, slow and merciless. Does Planet 9 influence Earth? You hold your breath as you ask it. Not because you expect an immediate answer, but because you already know how gravity works. Movement 2. The deep dive. You imagine gravity not as a force, but as a tide. A cosmic ocean that never rests, never forgets. Waves so long they take millions of years to rise, yet once they do, nothing resists them forever. This is how distant influences matter. Not through violence, through patience. A tiny pull, far away, does not announce itself. It shifts trajectories by fractions of fractions. A whisper of acceleration. A barely measurable lean. But time amplifies whispers. You picture the solar system as a vast clockwork once more. Not broken gears, but gears so sensitive that even a breath changes their rhythm. Each planet pulls on the others. Each orbit is a compromise, a balance held together by mutual tension. Introduce something new, something massive, distant, persistent, and the balance does not shatter. It drifts. You imagine Earth's orbit as a delicate loop, repeated billions of times with comforting regularity. Now imagine that loop being nudged, not today, not tomorrow, but steadily, over epochs. A millimeter here. A heartbeat of timing there. Gravity plays the long game. You think of poison, not the dramatic kind, but the kind that accumulates. The kind that changes chemistry molecule by molecule until the body wakes up one day unfamiliar to itself. This is how distant gravity works. Subtle, patient, inevitable. And then the cascade begins. You trace the consequences outward, like cracks spreading through ice. First, the asteroids. You picture the great reservoirs of rock and ice beyond the planets, ancient leftovers orbiting in quiet anonymity. Their paths are not fixed highways, they are suggestions, constantly negotiated by gravitational influences. A small change in one orbit nudges another. Resonances shift. Pathways open that were once closed. An asteroid does not need a violent shove to become dangerous. It only needs time. A distant tug alters its rhythm. A resonance amplifies the change. Millions of years later, its path crosses something it never did before. You imagine the sky as it was when dinosaurs walked beneath it, peaceful, unaware of the long choreography unfolding beyond their comprehension. You know how that story ends. Then, the climate. You have felt the seasons change your entire life, never questioning their arrival. But Earth's climate is not just weather, it is orbit written into air and ocean. subtle changes in tilt, in distance, in timing, cycles measured not in years, but in tens of thousands. You imagine these cycles as a slow breathing of the planet, regulated by celestial mechanics. Now imagine a distant influence leaning on that rhythm, ever so slightly. Not enough to notice in a lifetime. Enough to matter over ages. Ice advances. Ice retreats. Deserts bloom. Forests vanish. Civilizations rise within a window of stability so narrow it feels miraculous. You begin to understand how fragile that window truly is. And finally, orbital stability itself. The unspoken assumption that planets will remain loyal to their paths. That Earth will not wander. That the Sun's family will not rearrange itself. This assumption has always been an act of faith. You imagine the solar system not as frozen order, but as a living structure constantly negotiating equilibrium. Every added influence, every unseen mass, adds tension. Most of the time, tension holds. Sometimes it doesn't. You feel the existential unease settle in. Not panic. Recognition. The realization that your sky, your reliable ancient sky, may be shaped by something you have never seen. That the stars above you may be dancing to music played from the dark. You look up now, not with wonder, but with new awareness. The night sky has always felt distant, theatrical. A dome of lights pinned to black velvet. Decorative. But now it feels closer. More intimate. You realize that cosmic influence does not announce itself at human scales. It operates beneath your perception, beneath history, beneath memory. Planet 9, if it exists, does not need to threaten Earth directly. It does not need to aim. It does not need intent. It only needs to exist. Gravity does the rest. You feel a strange humility take hold. Not fear of destruction, but fear of irrelevance. The understanding that Earth's story is not written in isolation. That every breath you take exists inside a web of forces stretching far beyond your awareness. You think of all the times humanity has searched the sky for threats, comets blazing, supernovae flashing, gamma rays screaming across space. Those dangers are real, but they are honest. They announce themselves. This one does not. This one shapes fate quietly from the edge of the sun's reach, leaving you to discover its influence long after the consequences have unfolded. And then a darker thought emerges, uninvited. This is possible? If something unseen can shape orbits, climates, histories, what else might be hiding? You stand beneath the sky again, feeling its weight differently now. The stars have not changed. The constellations still trace familiar stories. The moon still pulls at the seas like a loyal companion. And yet, the comfort is thinner, because somewhere beyond the last bright planet, something may be pulling, slowly, silently, on the architecture of your home. Planet 9 does not loom like a monster. It lingers like a suspicion, a reminder that influence does not require visibility, and danger does not require intention. As you let that sink in, the final question hangs in the air, heavier than any answer. What else is hiding in the dark? Shaping your fate without permission? The universe does not respond. It simply keeps moving and invites you to notice. You thought this was a map, a finished diagram, a solved equation, but the universe does not write in ink. It sketches in shadow and revises without warning. You pull back, farther than before, past the familiar orbits you memorized as a child, past the orderly paths traced in textbooks and models, past the comforting illusion that everything important has already been found. You see the solar system again, but this time not as a diagram. You see it as motion, a living architecture of momentum and memory, worlds spinning on inherited habits, orbits carved by ancient negotiations between mass and time. You realize something quietly unsettling. The solar system was never a monument. It was never finished. It was never stable in the way you believed. It was always a draft. A working document written by gravity, revised by chaos, edited by time itself. You feel smaller, not diminished, but properly placed. Because drafts can change. You let your gaze linger on the spaces between the planets. The places no one lingered on long enough. Those dark corridors beyond the gas giants, where sunlight thins into memory and temperature loses meaning. Regions once dismissed as empty, uneventful, solved by assumption rather than observation. This is where certainty went to sleep. You remember how confidently humanity spoke of its cosmic neighborhood. Distances measured. Masses calculated. Motions predicted centuries in advance. The triumph felt complete. And yet, that confidence rested on something fragile. The idea that what we could see was all that mattered. Planet 9, whether it exists or not, emerges here not as an object, but as a symbol. A reminder. A quiet accusation. It reminds you that absence is not evidence. That darkness is not emptiness. That the spaces between known things are not neutral. They are active, influential, alive with possibility. You feel the weight of that realization settle in. We traced the bright. We trusted the obvious. We forgot to question the dark. The solar system you thought you understood begins to feel less like a machine and more like a weather system, predictable in patterns, but never truly complete. And something inside you shifts. You turn the lens inward now, toward humanity itself. You see the long arc of discovery, fire, language, cities, telescopes, equations. Each breakthrough narrowing the unknown, tightening the borders of mystery. You map the stars, named them, cataloged their deaths. You split atoms, bent spacetime, listened to the echo of the universe's birth. And somewhere along the way, arrogance slipped in quietly. Not the loud kind, the subtle kind. The assumption that the remaining darkness was merely waiting its turn to be explained. That ignorance was temporary. That the universe was fundamentally cooperative. Planet 9 fractures that assumption. Not by existing, but by being possible. Because its shadow reveals something deeper than a missing planet. It reveals a missing humility. You realize how much of science is built not on answers, but on trust. Trust that the laws you know apply everywhere, trust that patterns repeat, trust that the universe behaves itself. But the cosmos does not owe you consistency. It only owes you honesty. And sometimes honesty arrives as discomfort. Sometimes it arrives as an anomaly that refuses to go away. As data that bends models instead of confirming them. As silence where certainty once lived. You feel the stakes sharpen. If the solar system can still surprise you, if your own cosmic backyard can hide secrets this deep, then the universe is not merely unknown. It is unknowable in layers. Movement 3. Final escalation. You drift even farther back now. The sun shrinks to a star. The planets collapse into a whisper of motion. The entire solar system becomes a faint ripple in the galaxy's spiral arm. From here, the revelation feels almost tender. You understand that the danger was never a rogue planet or an unseen mass. The danger was believing the story was over. Because when you believe a story is finished, you stop listening. You stop questioning the gaps. You stop respecting the silence. You mistake familiarity for truth. Planet 9, real or imagined, has already done its work. It reminded you that knowledge is provisional. That every model is temporary. That certainty is not a destination but a phase. You think of all the invisible influences shaping reality, dark matter threading galaxies, dark energy stretching space itself, unseen forces sculpting destinies over timescales too long for memory. You realize now that mystery is not a failure of science. It is its fuel. The solar system, once framed as a solved clockwork, reveals itself instead as a conversation still unfolding between gravity and chaos, order and accident, the seen and the unseen. And for the first time, that does not feel threatening. It feels honest. You return one last time to Earth, not as a center, but as a participant. A world suspended inside an unfinished story. Whether Planet 9 exists or not no longer feels like the point. Because its true impact was never gravitational. It was philosophical. It showed you that certainty can be an illusion. That maps are not territories. That even the most familiar systems still contain silence waiting to be respected. The universe did not betray its laws. It did something far more unsettling. It revealed that you never fully knew them. And in that revelation, the cosmos does not close. It opens.